Hello and welcome to another episode of Short Sharp Schlocks, the YouTube show for the makers of Schlock Tactics, which is a bad movie podcast, but here we talk about new and current movies, whether they be good, bad or otherwise. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Dr. Sleep. That is the 39 years in the making sequel, pseudo-sequel to The Shining, obviously the greatest horror film, one of that has ever been made, and it takes massive bollocks to write a sequel to that, which Stephen King obviously did, and takes even bigger bollocks to make a sequel to the legendary Shining. So I'm going to get into that and whether it sort of measures up to that impossible expectation. So this one's directed by Mike Flanagan. He also did Gerald's Game, a pretty good Netflix original, also a Stephen King adaptation. So here he's tackling director and writer, adapting Stephen King's Dr. Sleep book. To start, Ewan McGregor as the grown-up Danny Torrance, Rebecca Ferguson as a character called Rose, and Cliff Curtis, people might know from stuff like Sunshine, 10,000 BC, which is a hilarious bad movie, The Meg, stuff like that, Fast and the Furious. He's been in all those sorts of things. And also a really good Native American actor called Zahn McClarnon, who was in Fargo and Westworld and lots of good things. So he's one to look out for as well. So, like I say, this does pick up 39 years after the events of the original film. We actually get a recasting of those characters, a brand new Shelley Duvall, Danny Torrance. All new actors are brought in to briefly portray these characters, and then we kind of fast forward and we find Ewan McGregor as a kind of grown-up Danny Torrance, obviously having lots of mental issues, alcohol issues from having the childhood that he did, and experiencing the events of The Shining. And he's still seeing the Dick Halloran character from the original film, the guy that taught him how to shine in the original film. He pops up every now and then as a ghost, so you know that he still has the power to shine, as it were. And he starts being communicated to by another child who can shine, called Abra, and he's sort of trying to move on with his life, but she's kind of writes things telepathically on his wall and chats to him. All the while he's working as an orderly in a hospice. And he knows when old people are going to die and goes in there and sort of helps them. That's why he's called Dr. Sleep. Now, at the same time all this is happening, there's this sort of group of characters who are sort of like vampire type characters. They're led by Rose, also Crow Daddy, a bunch of other people who you've seen pop up in other Stephen King adaptations. Also the really tall guy from Twin Peaks, a tall French guy. That's whole other side of the film. They portray these sort of vampiric characters who live a nomadic life, and they try and find children so that they can children who shine, so that they can torture them and breathe in their essence, or their steam as they call it. And that's the sort of villains of the film, led by this Rose character. So that's the plot basically. I mean, it was a good film. I thought it was pretty good. Obviously way too long, 2.5 hours, incredibly long film, but I thought it was good. I thought that it expanded upon some of the ideas that were introduced in The Shining without trying to be The Shining too much. Although towards the end of the film, I thought they really pushed their luck with the reliance on the nostalgia, of The Shining, and seeing some of those kind of characters again. What I did like about the film was when it did try to bring new things into it. So these horde of vampire characters, especially the character Rose, I thought was a really great performance, really great character, completely new to the sort of Shining story. And these sort of characters reminded me of like the Lost Boys or the vampires in Near Dark, this sort of ragtag nomadic family that wander around, and this sort of they're villains, but they're sort of relatable in a way as well in their sort of family behaviour. For me, Ewan McGregor, I'm never been a big fan of, and I thought in this film he was a bit of a charisma vacuum, as I think he often is. I didn't really get too invested in his character or his performance. He just played it pretty straight and did what he was meant to do. like I say, the film falls down a little bit when they do the more obvious things, like him sticking his face in the doorway, like Jack Nicholson, and, you know, chasing Abra with an axe because he's possessed by the spirit of his dad. That stuff is pretty lazy, and I don't know whether it's in the book or whether it's been created for this film. I suspect it's been created for the film, because then you can actually revisit the sets and the characters from the original film. And it's worth noting that they did actually recreate the Overlook Hotel really well, a slightly more dilapidated version of it. So I thought that was kind of cool, and you knew they were going to bring in those elements from the original film because it's so iconic. Lots of cool Easter eggs to look out for as well, for Stephen King fans and fans of the original film. Just lots of scenes that were reminiscent of the original without being as obvious as some of the other stuff in the film. So, yeah, I would say it's just a pretty good horror sequel. When you consider it's a sequel to The Shining, and a film of legendary proportions, I actually exceeded my expectations a little bit. A very serviceable sequel, considering how iconic and how famous that film is, and even the direction kind of stands up to Stanley Kubrick's direction. I mean, there's a lot of aerial shots winding around as there were in the original, and Mike Flanagan is pretty good at that as well. So yeah, I think a worthy successor to The Shining. Obviously not as good, you wouldn't expect it to be, but still better than I think it had any right to be. Yeah, that's what I thought of Dr. Sleep. Let me know what you thought if you've seen it in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you like it as much as The Shining? Have you seen The Shining? You know, I'd be interested to know how many people haven't seen The Shining but still watch this. Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel so you'll know whenever there's a new review. Check out Schlock Tactics. Last episode that we did, it was Waterworld and Willow. Epic and expensive bad films, and we also had guests in the studio for the first time. We had the band Destroy the Beast, Find the Baby talking about their new EP and how they weirdly take inspiration from bad movies. So check out Schlock Tactics. Keep subscribed to this channel so you'll know when there's another episode of this. But that's been another episode of Short Sharp Schlocks, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. It's alive. It must be.